Just to stop people furiously writing notes and things like that, I do have a lot of this stuff in a text file. We're not going to get through all of it. There's too much information. And basically, all the information that we're going to be going through is either ripped from Jeffrey Snover's PowerShell Unplugged sessions that have been done at Microsoft Ignite or Microsoft TechEd before that over the last 4, 5 or more years. And there are a number of other sites that I've got as well as far as resources are concerned. So I'll stick them up on the meetup site under comments for more information for that sort of stuff. But the important thing is that as we go through today, that if I have any problems, I know I can ask Dave for help. As we go through today, if you have particular questions or particular thoughts about doing things, feel free to ask questions. And if there's anything that you found PowerShell really useful for, then please let us all know. All right. I am by no means a PowerShell expert, but this is an intro, and so all I reckon I need to do is to be above where most people are at. That'd be fair. That's how I got Dave here for help. Now, when I was first starting to look at PowerShell, all the material that was going on about PowerShell was, it's really, really easy to learn. Bullshit. All right. Once you start getting into it, it'll become really, really easy. Crap. All right. For some people, particularly if you come from an IT pro infrastructure background rather than a developer background, it can be a real struggle to get your head around PowerShell. Why the heck would I need to learn PowerShell when I've got the graphic interface for doing things, when I can use the command line for doing things, when I can run a bash shell now and do everything through bash? All right. Can I ask how many people here have got a Linux or Unix background or skills as well? There's a few of you. Okay, cool. Those who are responsible for doing system administration or administration of machines, hands up. Okay, that's a bit more, probably half the room. There are a few, and I did listen to when Brett was asking how many had only just started playing around or playing with PowerShell before. How many of you can spell PowerShell? All right. Yes, it is a capital S in the middle of PowerShell, so fantastic. Now, the first thing most people will do when they have a look at PowerShell, to get into PowerShell, and before I start capturing stuff, you won't need to have too much on the screen for this. Let me just duplicate the screen. Most of you would probably go, I'll start typing PowerShell, and that would be the one that would pop up for you. This is, if you've played around with PowerShell, this is probably the most familiar looking window. Would that be fair call?
No. Mine is black.
You can change the color, you can change the title, we can even play around and show you how to change the title at the top and other things. All right? But this is what most people will jump into with PowerShell. If you are starting with PowerShell, all right, if this is the start of your journey, I would suggest not starting here. This is probably more akin to the command window that you're more commonly used to. What I would suggest that you use is the PowerShell ISE. Now, you can run this as an administrator. I've already got one open here. So I'm going to open that up. and we start capturing. Okay. First time you open the PowerShell ISE, which stands for Integrated Scripting Environment, you'll either have a script pane up the top and the run section down the bottom, or you may have it pop up with show command add-on happening on the side here. There are a number of reasons why I suggest you might want to go for this more complicated environment to start with than just the simple window for learning PowerShell. Because the first command that you probably want to be using when you're using PowerShell is get, actually let's just do down here to show you what's happening here, is get help. And we have IntelliSense in this. And get help has a heck of a lot of information here. The trouble with running get help in the normal PowerShell window is that once you run get help, it's off the screen. Now what you can do in the normal PowerShell window is you could say get help, but I want you to show it to me in a different window. And what it will do is it will open up a separate window with whatever command you have done to show for show window in with all of the PowerShell help. The unfortunate thing is that if you are on a single monitor, single screen monitor, it sits there in front of your screen. If you've got multiple monitors, you can shift that to another monitor and have the help sitting there while you're busy typing stuff and seeing both at the same time. I've got my screen duplicated here, so I've really only got one monitor. So what I'll do is I'll say, I'm actually going to pipe get help. Sorry. To the clipboard, and then I can paste it up here. So if I need to have help for any commands, and I can have as many of these tabs as I want open, I can have the help there, I can see what I need to type, and then I can be typing down here in the interactive section if I want to. All right. Is there anybody who hadn't seen the integrated scripting environment before? Wasn't aware of it? Everyone was aware of it? Fantastic. Okay, you will have seen that there's two things that I did there. One was I ran get help with a -show window. For most of the commands that you're going to be using in PowerShell, like the commands that you use in the command line, there are extra parameters that you can tack onto it to help it do things. Sometimes it's tricky though to find out what those parameters are. The other thing the second thing I did was get help. I used the pipe symbol, which is the straight line, to the clipboard. You can pipe stuff to the clipboard. Any of the things that you do in PowerShell, instead of piping it out, coming it out to the screen, you can say, I want to send the output instead to the clipboard. I also have some cheat notes here, which I'll be referring to from time to time. Yes. This is an important thing to know. I ran get help here. Get help now does not ship with PowerShell. First thing you should do when you've got PowerShell installed is to run update help. If you want information on how to use update help, what do you think you would need to type in order to get information on how to use update help?
Get help, update help.
Get help, update help is exactly right. Yes. And in fact, if I use the dash online, let's just do that here. Get help, update help dash online. You see it actually opens up a web browser for me and takes me to the latest information for update help. It tells me the version of PowerShell that it's running. The latest version of PowerShell is 5.1, and it contains all the information that is currently available in help for update help. And yes, this page is very useful. Thank you. And that window might not have shown up in the video, but the commands did, so people will know how to get to it. Once you have information on, also, let's go back. Why do we think that the help files haven't been included with the basic install of the operating system? Why do you think that might be the case?
Because we're text so small.
Sorry, yes?
So small.
Let's keep it small. In fact, Windows is written in different languages. So not only are there help files in English, there are help files in all sorts of other languages as well. Not only is there help for the base modules, there is help for all sorts of other extra modules that you can install. Is anybody responsible for looking after Active Directory? Hands up. About half the room. There is a PowerShell module specifically for looking after Active Directory. Right? That is not installed by default. If you go looking for help on the AD commands, you will get errors unless you have installed that module. So what you can do is we can say, in fact, I want to update help, and if I use the dash module, star, force and verbose, that is going to go and have a look at my system, see all of the PowerShell modules that are actually installed, including the base core ones. Go out up to the internet, find the latest version of help that's available for it, pull it down if it needs updating, and because I selected dash verbose, it's actually telling me everything that it's doing during this process.
Except it doesn't tell you how much space it needs.
Of course, it doesn't know how much space it's going to need until it's actually pulled down all the stuff. The way that PowerShell works is it doesn't do all this calculation beforehand and then give you this nice pretty graphic of things flying across with totally unrealistic times. It's just working through and working through and working through. All right?
Can you clarify? I work a lot with Azure PowerShell.
Yep.
And when I'm looking for help files on particular verb usage, it will actually download that for me now. I thought it did that across all modules. Is that the case? I don't.
Not sure of the specifics. Not sure of the specifics. It used to be the case that in the early days the help would be all pulled down at once. Microsoft have moved away from that more recently, just because of the sheer volume of things that have increased and the rate of change. The last thing we want to do is be working with help files that are out of date or deprecated, using deprecated information.
Well, that's version 5, so 5.1. We suppose that help files are relevant to version 5.1.
A lot of the base commands are still very similar, but we do want to make sure that we've got the latest version because that's the one that's going to work with here. There are extra commands that people have added, and we'll show you how some of those commands have been added in.
No, what I'm talking about, the system's supposed to know what version of PowerShell is installed.
Yes.
So it's supposed to update the help files if version of PowerShell is updated.
Well, that's more advanced details. So what I'm doing is the basics here is to make sure that you get help on the system. Now, where is this going to get the help from? Microsoft. It's going online to get it from the source. Have any of you got machines that are not internet connected? How the heck are you going to update help on machines that you're going to be running PowerShell on if they're not internet connected. Yeah.
Print it all out.
Yeah, you print it all out. Dave, I thought you were an expert. Microsoft understands this. What you have the ability to do is to actually put the help into a source folder onto a USB stick or a shared drive or something else, and then point the update help to that location instead of the default location. How do you reckon we'd work out what the command is to point it to a USB drive or a shared drive instead of the internet? Get help, update help. All right, the commands are all in there, the examples are all in there as well. So that's going to probably take a little while. So while that's happening, I can actually do Control T to start a new command window, and Control N for another script block for that if I want to.
Probably also worth mentioning that if you find a mistake in documentation, you can fix it.
Yes, in fact, the most recent version of PowerShell Unplugged that was done this year at Ignite was all about updating help. All of the PowerShell information is now stored in GitHub, which was an arcane expression that I'd never heard on the infrastructure side of the fence, but for developers it would be quite familiar. And for those of us who are working in the Microsoft space, we have to get used to the fact that Microsoft is a software development company, and it is going to be storing, come in folks, and is going to be storing stuff in GitHub.
How are you going to SSH into GitHub?
I would suggest if you want information on how to connect to GitHub and to be
I
in...
know how to connect to GitHub. The question is, how can I use the PowerShell to connect to GitHub?
How can you use PowerShell to connect to GitHub? I would suggest that you look at the most recent PowerShell Unplugged session that Jeffrey Snover did at Ignite this year in Orlando, and they go through using PowerShell to connect to the GitHub repositories and doing all the information from there. So again, that's probably a bit more of an advanced topic. If you are the sort of person that is going to be fixing up error files and that sort of stuff, you're probably a bit beyond 101. And I would hope that if you are only at 101 level and you find errors, I would check that it really is actually an error in the help file first.
I assume there's another reason why they don't bundle straight up.
Okay, Dave, so another reason why they don't bundle them straight up?
Like, because then you want to get the latest for getting the current documentation.
Yeah. Yes, you want to make sure that you are getting the latest version. All right. In fact, if we go to, if you want more information on getting files, let's just all the PowerShell documentation is actually in a good place to start. Is docs.microsoft.com/enus PowerShell. There's a stack of tutorials and other things, and you can just get started on how to learn to use PowerShell. When you start looking at scripting, oops, see if it gets me this way. If you go to the cookbooks and the other scripts that are available online, you may be able to see at the top in the URL there, it's got PowerShell-5.1. It's referring to PowerShell version 5.1. If you are on a system, for whatever reason, needs older versions of PowerShell, you can actually change the version of PowerShell. not much difference between 5 and 5.1, but it will actually take the references back to the scripts that were relevant to the older versions of PowerShell. To show you that there isn't a version 6 that is available on the public sites yet, there is work being done on 6. Doesn't like it. The URL redirects you back and says it's not available. There's nothing available for PowerShell version 6.0 yet. I'm taking you back to the latest or the closest available version, which is 5.1. Yeah. So even the websites are trying to help you use the right things for PowerShell. Okay. By the way, while we're talking about errors, you'll see there's some angry red text on the page. That's what we normally have when we've got errors happening. You can actually change the color of the error messages that are coming up to be something a little bit more conducive to a stressless environment if you so want. Once again, I will refer you to the most recent PowerShell Unplugged session at Ignite, where they actually go through and show examples of how to change the color of the PowerShell error codes as well. All right. Now, PowerShell is been deliberately written in a way to make the command set easy to use. Unlike the command prompt and old DOS versions of things where it was a total mix of things, the idea is let's have something that's consistent and we can work with. So everything you do in PowerShell consists of a verb followed by a noun. Yeah. So if I want to stop a process from running, the command would be stop process. Exactly right.
Kill process.
Now, when we start talking about verbs, there are some people who say, I don't want to just stop it, I want to kill it. And then there are others who go, actually that's probably a little bit too violent. We want to make sure that we're a friendly environment. Let's terminate the process instead. So if we had the situation where there were so many verbs that it became almost impossible to remember what the commands are, it just makes PowerShell unusable. So what we could do is we can say, look, I want to find out what verbs are actually useful or actually used. So I can actually say, get me the verbs. And it actually shows me the verbs that we can use. In fact, let's make it a little bit easier to see what's going on here. You remember that I had the option of piping the text, the output from here to the clipboard. There's somewhere else that I can pipe it to as well, which might be quite interesting for you if you've got lots of information coming out and you don't want to be continually typing in new commands each time to work out what you're looking for. What I can do is I can actually pipe the output from getVerb into what's called out grid view. And out grid view gives me this nice little, I suppose, window that shows me the output in a way that can be filtered. So I have all the verbs, and I might want to see, have I got any kill? I've got no kills. I've got no terminates, but I do have stops. This is in the lifecycle group. I might want to say, okay, what other things have I got in the I can sort by group. I can now have a look at all of the commands that are in the lifecycle group. Start, stop, resume, restart. Or I could just add criteria to say, instead of looking at everything, I can just say, just tell me the stuff that is in the lifecycle group. And now I have just the verbs that are used on any PowerShell expression that relate to life cycles of things. I used to find out grid view quite useful when I was looking at lots and lots of information. I just do a star, use wildcards for grabbing a whole lot of information, and then instead of adding extra and extra commands and just trying to refine the commands each time, I just start with this and then play around with filters. Makes it a heck of a lot easier to dig and find the information that you're looking for rather than having screen after screen after screen rolling up. All right. Now we've limited the number of verbs. We don't really limit the number of nouns. There are more and more things growing all the time, so there is no get noun available because there are just too many of them. Okay?
With that out dash grid view command, there's a few cool parameters you can put at the end. One of them is dash pass through. So what you can actually do is the exact same command, dash pass through, and then pipe out to something else. If you just do it and get presenter, it gives you the exact same thing. But what it lets you do is pick an option or possibly multiple options and then push that back out to PowerShell. So if you like, I don't know what I'm looking for, but I want to do something with it, or I'm doing the same command multiple times and I don't want to have to work out how to filter it, you can do the lazy way, pick the option that you want, and then pass that further down the command tree.
Yep. Pass-through is one of those options that is on some of these things to allow for a pipeline. Now, it's probably worth mentioning, particularly for those of you who've got a bit of a Unix heritage or Linux heritage, but haven't played around too much with PowerShell. In the Linux world, everything is text. In the Unix world, everything is text. So when we're actually doing, well, let's show you this. I'll just get out of here. Resize this a bit. Get process and show all the processes that are currently running on my system. All right. If I wanted to change the layout or change the format of this sort of stuff in Unix world, because this is a text output, I would need to then work out how many characters long am I trying to chop off and move around and do other bits and pieces like that. In PowerShell, it's not actually text until it gets put onto the screen. Up to this point, when I've just done get process, it's actually gone and grabbed all of these as objects. And some of the properties of those objects are the things that we see here. Handles, npm, pm, these have been selected for us as defaults, but these aren't the only things that relate to these processes. So I could say get process, and instead I want to format this as a table and just show me the name and handles. And this is when you're normally doing these demos, you'd restart your machine so that you've got far fewer processes and other things running at the time. Otherwise, it keeps on going off the screen like that. It doesn't actually decide to transform it into text until it's actually processed the last bit, which says, this is going to be coming out as text, but the only bits and pieces that I want you to grab from get process is the name and the handles. You might, okay, I've got the name and the handles. And I've got these other things at the top. What else information can I get from get process?
Can we sort it out, like who is actually using the most of the CPUs? Or
Get process, sort by property. Or do we want to do it by descending order? Let's do by descending order. That might be more relevant, mightn't it? Descending. Oops, sorry. This is where let's just used to having a bigger keyboard. Let's do it up here, and this way I can make mistakes if I want to. Sort, descending, property. Now that I've written that, when I hit enter, it doesn't actually run it until I decide I want to run that section, so I can do that with running the selection. Oh, select it, run it. And now it has sorted it by CPU. There are a number of other things that we could do from this though, and CPUs is just one of the properties that we can get from get process. If we want to see what other properties belong inside get process, lets you know that the properties are actually a member of get process. So members includes methods that we can use and properties that are contained within these objects. So if I wanted to work out what members were present in get process, what do you reckon the command would be? Let's try get member. Get member. Get process. Didn't like it.
Get process. Get member.
Get. Oops. Get process. Get member. There we go. In fact, to make this a little bit easier, let's pipe that out to grid view. And you can see that we have a whole lot more properties than we were actually showing just in the normal get process. The other thing I want you to note here is that not only do we have properties and methods, we have some other things as well. Now, there is a common misconception that PowerShell is actually based on .NET. It's not based on .NET, but it is implemented in .NET. And while .NET for developers have particular types, PowerShell is known as having adaptive types. In other words, it will use whatever types are represented in the things that it's working with and show them in a way that hopefully makes sense to you when you're looking at them. You know? So we have, particularly when you're doing things like WMI or XML or other things that have got some really weird and funky types associated with them, PowerShell will show them. But I want to show you some things here. Let's go to down the bottom here, script properties. Notice that one of these scripts, let's pick one Company. Processes actually have some data in it, a property in it called company, but it is buried. Whoever wrote the processes module buried company way down deep inside the main module, file version info, company name. But what PowerShell wants to do is, for some of this information that is buried down deep, wants to make that a lot easier to get to. So I can say get process and format table showing me name, company, and you'll see that it's actually showing me all the processes that are aimed by name and just the company. That company information is otherwise buried down deep inside. I could, if I want to remove all the Microsoft ones, in fact I've got, save me typing it all out again. Let's just close that. And I'll just adjust this a little bit. So this is what I've done here, is I have run a command get process where the company is not like Microsoft. And then I've formatted the table to show me the name, the company, the description, and I've auto-sized it to fit the screen. Now I could do the same thing let's get rid of that. Hey, this doesn't have the where is in it, but that company is actually an alias. That's why it's a script property rather than just a strict property. That company, let's pop that. Out to clip. Oh, sorry, that's just the output. So we can show it here. Change it back to this way. And the nice thing about using PowerShell is I've got auto zoom. As well, I don't have to install Zoom it. This is actually replaced by company. So in that outgrid view where we showed company, it was a script property, and then it had the string of where it belongs. What we've done here is we've created a little script block that says, instead of just using company, we've said, I want to use a label company, and the expression, the code that we're actually running is take whatever the current process is that's coming through, go into the main module, go into file version info, grab the company name, and return that. As I said, we've got that built in at the moment where it's showing it as company. What I could do is I could change the label to something else. I could say owning organisation. Yeah, let's send it through to the clipboard. Now if I go to the top, you'll see that instead of having company at the top of the list, I've got owning organisation. Right. So there are certain expressions, certain things that have been popped in there for you to use, like company, that are default. Doesn't mean we can't change them. So one of the other things that PowerShell lets us do, and I'm worrying that I'm jumping around a bit, but intro sort of stuff, so if you want to hit something more, then please interrupt me. At the moment, we've just been dealing with the normal sort of things that you'd been doing with the command prompt. If I want to do I can do a directory. You can see I can actually see, probably not a good idea to do it on the system folder because it's going to go forever. Control-C, I can break out of that. Users, not sure I've really got too much in there. Okay, that's a lot shorter. Okay.
You do Alias as well?
I can. Now, why can I do ls and dir don't follow the normal rules of verb, noun? Right. How do we know what aliases we've got on the system? Get alias.
Is there an alias for get alias?
You could create one if you wanted to. So what we can see here is all the aliases that have actually been put onto the system. Right? In fact, if I'm not sure exactly if I want to find out exactly what it is without getting the whole lot, I can just say, you know what, I want to get a command that's dir. And dir tells me that dir is an alias, and it is an alias of get child item. So the real PowerShell command for dir is get child item. Let's test a theory and see if ls is the same thing. And in fact, it is. Now these aliases have to be stored somewhere. These aliases are actually stored in their own drive. It's called a PowerShell Drive. And we can see what PowerShell drives we actually have on our system. Most of the time we are going to be spending time sitting on the C drive or the D drive or whatever drive it happens to be that you are normally working in your file system. But I want you to take note of some of the others that are there. There is the alias drive. How do you reckon I could find out the contents of the alias drive? Well, let's take it step. If you were opening up a command prompt, how would you find out what the contents were of your C drive? What would you type in? dir space C colon. Yeah? What do you reckon I'd type in to find out the contents of the alias drive? That's exactly the same as the get alias command.
How can I get the user certificate storage and the machine certificate storage? I presume the one we could see here is the user one.
We're having a look at the certificates drive. We have certificates for the current user and we have certificates for the local machine. And we can actually navigate through the certificate storage in the same way that we would navigate through a file structure. We can also, if you have a look at the top, we can also navigate through the registry, HKLM, HKCU. I can do a directory of HK. Oops, did I spell that wrong? No, that's correct. And you'll see that it's actually obeying the normal rules that you would have when accessing the registry. If you open up Registry Editor as an administrator, you'll get access to the hardware, you'll get access to the software, you won't be able to get into the salmon system hives. You'll see there's also a function drive, a variable drive, environment drive, so you can see what variables you actually have on the system. And at the moment, there is nothing there out of the ordinary. But I could add something to a variable. A variable in PowerShell starts with a $. So $_ is whatever the current variable is. I can say, and $Adelaide IT Pro community, and I can say this equals hello and welcome to PowerShell. Now if I do a directory of my, in fact if I show you, I can just do AITPC, it'll show me the contents of that variable, and if I have a look on my variable drive, you'll see that I now have a variable called AITPC.
These are system variables, not PowerShell variables. So that means if you define a variable, there's going to be staying on the system forever?
Good question. No, this is in the current session. So what we've done is we've created a variable that just belongs within this session. If we wanted to create a variable that persists outside of this session, what we need to do is we need to put it into a profile. Now there are actually multiple profiles, and I can have a look at $profile, and it shows me that my current profile, let's go this way. My current profile is stored in this file here. And I should be able to go, let's see if this works. Actually, let's see if I can do it this way. Haven't tried this before. No, okay. Let's see if it likes this way.
Most probably it doesn't exist, but the question is why didn't it open it with empty file?
Okay, it's because it doesn't actually exist. Let's yep, I've got nothing in there. So if I won't go into this and muck up the profiles at the moment, but I could create that file, and then that file there would be the profile that it will be pulling all the information from for this session. Now you've actually got a number of profiles. So let's.
Do you have the common one?
Hang on a sec. Let's Run that. These are the profiles that we can get on our system. We can have a profile for all users, sorry, all hosts. So this is one host, PowerShell, there's the PowerShell Windows, there's the other hosts. So we can have ones for all hosts, we can have ones just for the current host, in this case it'd be PowerShell ISE. And we can do it for all, so all users, these are all users and these are the all users, all hosts, all users, current host, current user, all hosts, and current user, current host. So depending upon who's going to be using your system, you can set up profiles.
But if you run it from PowerShell, from command prompt, it wouldn't be ISE.
No, that's right. So there's that.
So do we have the common one?
Yeah, all hosts.
All hosts only.
All hosts covers all PowerShell hosts, which is the PowerShell command line, remoting and other sorts of things, as well as PowerShell ISE. Current host in this case would only apply to the ISE. Just keep that in mind if you've got other people using the system. Now notice these are stored under my profile here. If you store these in the generic Windows System 32 PowerShell profile, it's going to affect everybody who's logging on and using PowerShell on the system. All right? You could significantly screw up somebody. Now, shall I tell you how to screw up people?
Marry them?
No, Brett, that Brett said marry them for the video. So, all right. I need to explain something to you then. There is a processing order. The processing order is, I will look for an alias first. If I cannot find an alias, I will then look for a function. If I can't find a function, I will then find the commandlet. And the commandlets are the stuff that's built in. So I'm not sure I actually had, I thought I might have had some copy and paste here. Okay, so no, but what I could do is I could say $get. Actually, I need to do this is a script, don't I? Dave, I might need your help if I screw this up. Just set a simple function to override. All right. No, I don't particularly want to screw this up. Let me talk you through the example here, and just in lieu of the time, since it's now gone 5 o'clock. One of the most commonly used, particularly for beginners, commands is get command and get help. If you create an alias that says of an alias of get help that points to get process or something else instead, every time that person types get help, it'll instead run get process, because get alias is higher up the processing order. So what I suggest you do is, if you think that somebody is screwing around with your system, unless they've screwed around with get command of get help, for example, will show you that, no, actually, the only command that's actually running get help is the commandlet, so I'm safe. All right?
If I make an alias for get command?
Yeah, so then hopefully they haven't completely screwed you up, in which case, yeah, I'd go start looking at the profile files as well. Hopefully they're not that malicious. But the other thing that you'd do is you would do a directory of alias to see if they've actually popped in anything in alias. So I've got nothing. Nobody's put a get something for an alias, so that's fine. So I can see all aliases that start with the letter S, for example, just by normal directory commands. I could also do a directory of functions and see what functions I have as well. And you'll see that drive letters are actually functions.
That's also something to keep in mind if you're trying to port a script from another system that uses
Yes.
commands. Some of those might be aliased and they may work, but quite often they don't.
Can I enforce the command to be run as command and not as
Yeah, no, so it's actually a very good point that Dave's making, is that when you get used to using PowerShell, one of the things with PowerShell is that you find a complicated way of doing things, and then rather than typing out all this text again, create an alias for it or create a function for it, and then you just have to use that. And I said, if you go through and have a look at the PowerShell Unplugged or some of the scripting examples, you will see time and time again, they've got this complicated script block that gets used again and again and again. We've assigned it to a variable, and that variable is just an alias. All right? And then we just use that again and again and again. And because we want that to persist across multiple hosts and multiple users, we will pop it in a profile file and have it stored there instead. If you are taking code from or commands from one system to another, remember the profile file. You know, or if things aren't working, that's probably one of the first things to check is there a profile that's being lifted and used for that. If you do a dir of the folder that of the folders that the profiles are in, and these can be changed. So don't just assume that these are the ones that they're going to be in. Always check and see where PowerShell thinks it's getting the profiles from. If you do a dir of these and find that there is no PS1 files, okay. Or if these files don't exist, okay, those profiles are empty. These are just placeholders for where they're going to be. All right?
But how can I force actually to run the get commands as a command, not an alias?
Okay, if you want to, if you have aliases that are going to get in the way, you can actually do it, because I can say get command, and you can go through the online help to actually get the information if you're worried about your system being totally screwed up. Let's say get process. This is a commandlet, get process. So let's try it this way.
While Pete's doing that, I'll just say on aliases, the opposite applies to when you're actually doing a script to refer to later or sharing around. Don't use aliases then.
Yeah.
You might know that ls is a shortcut to get process.
Get child item.
Sorry, child item, correct. Yeah. You may not know what that map's doing. So it might be readable to you, but it may not be readable to someone else. And they might be replacing their alias for something else as well, because they're trying to do something smart.
Yep.
So script-wise, don't touch aliases. For your own methods, use aliases wherever it makes you more.
Yeah. So I could have typed get child item instead of dir for either of these things. Commandlet, get process, we're identifying this is the command, not a function, not an alias. It's actually in Microsoft PowerShell management. So I could actually run get process by running microsoft.powershell.management.getProcess. This is the full path to, this is the module that it sits in. This is the full path to this commandlet. If somebody has gone to the extent of making bloody aliases for full paths of that, find out who it is and call them over the coals or get them to fix it. I mean, this is, don't screw with that too much.
So there's no way actually to override.
Yes, you could specify.
Put an aliases.
Yeah, you could specify, well, you could just go and wipe any aliases, so remove dash item, remove dash child item, under the variables or the variables drive or the aliases drive of anything that starts with get star, and that'll get rid of them.
Can you change the processing order? I think is the question. So
no.
So you cannot change that processing order.
You can start PowerShell without a profile.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Some people also clear all aliases at the very first line of the script because they're paranoid.
Yeah. So start without a profile, change. Start without, yes. So have that in your scripts where part of your script is some housekeeping sort of things. But yeah, you can put the whole path in if you want, but these are standards for a reason so that you don't have to have lots and lots of typing and have to know the full path. In the same way that if you've got 2 executables on your system in separate files, separate folders, all right, if I've got batch.bat and batch.bat in 2 separate folders, and I'm in the way where the current one is, but I want to run the other one, I have to put in the full path to that other file location in order to run it. Otherwise, it's going to run whatever is in my current folder. And if it can't find anything there, it'll go through the path variable to find out which one is first. All right? So all the same rules apply for running things and for understanding things, but the main points I want you to get from this, and sorry for running a bit over time, get help. Get help is your friend. All right? Don't use the just normal command window, the PowerShell window. Use the ISC and use the tabs to put information up there. Use out grid view. You can use aliases. Out grid view, if you don't like typing out grid view, there is an alias for out grid view, OGV. You can just pipe stuff to OGV. All right? Get process, there is a good thing to play around with if you're playing around with it. Get process, there is an alias for get process, GPS. If I just type in GPS, it'll run get process. There are a whole stack of these ones. Have a look through the aliases that are already there in the system, add any others that you might want to use, and if they're valuable to you, start having a look at profiles so that you can then reuse them from session to session to session. All right? Know that the help is always available online, and remember the processing order of alias, function, commandlet. All right? Troubleshooting can be problematic sometimes, especially if you're in an environment where people like to play tricks on you. I started off in the days where people used to remove the mouse balls from mouse. Mice used to have little balls that run around on the table. All right? Or we used to swap the mouse buttons around. Or we used to do other things where you'd actually change the orientation of the screen so it was at 90 degrees or upside down. One of the new ways of mucking around with people is to change their profiles for PowerShell. All right? You have been warned. I'm not suggesting you do it, but just keep that in mind. All right? With that, if there is enough interest for more advanced PowerShell bits and pieces, then let Adam and Brett know. There is a stack of information here. I will post the links to all of the online resources that are valuable. And if you have anything in particular that you want to have some of the examples, I'll post them. Let me know through the comments and meetup, and I will post them for you as well.
And you'll also be able to view this on YouTube as well.
And you can also see this on YouTube.
Awesome. Cool. Well, thanks, Pete. That's very good.
Thank you for watching this Adelaide Microsoft IT Pro community presentation. We could not do this work without the continued support from our sponsors, Microsoft and DevExpress. For more information on past or future events, or to join the community, please visit the links below.